I read my husband's journal, and in it he says that he hates me and hopes I die. My husband has kept a semi-regular journal throughout our 4-year relationship. He does not keep it hidden, and up until now I have always respected his privacy. We had a heated conversation and my dad told me to read it, so after he left for work, I did. He wrote several times that he hates me, and at one point he said when I was sick he hoped I would die. When I read those words, I packed up me and our baby and went to a friend's where I'm staying now. I took pictures of all the pages. I told him I just need some space to cool off after our conversation and I will be home soon. I booked with my therapist and contacted a lawyer. We had a rough patch recently that lasted about 2 weeks. It was a dark time, but we pulled through. There was no violence, no moments where I was afraid of him, just sincere conversations about difficult feelings. The notes of hatred correspond with that rough patch. The rest of the journal is tame and reflects the man I know and love, mostly little self-pep talks around work and family stuff, goals, habit tracking. He has sent me several warm messages since I left. He says he's glad I'm taking space for myself, that he looks forward to reconnecting when I come home, it's okay to have little hiccups, that he loves me, etc. I was sure our relationship was over the moment I read that he hates me, or even the moment I felt the need to violate his privacy, but the warm messages and the rest of the journal have me wavering a little. I understand the need to blow off steam when things are tense, and journaling is a healthy way to do that. But never in even our darkest moments have I fantasized about his death. Splitting up maybe, but this feels so sinister. I don't know how I could ever feel safe around him again. Is this just healthy venting and I'm overreacting here? Has anyone else had similar thoughts about a spouse that they then got over? Or is this a man I need to protect myself and my baby from? Edit to add context, the rough patch was about his feelings for another woman. He didn't cheat, but his friendship with her makes me uncomfortable. The part of the journal where he says he hates me was written as a love letter to her. He says he thinks about me dying and being replaced. TLDR, husband and I had a rough patch, and he wrote in his journal that he hates me and hopes I die. Wondering if this could just be healthy venting, or if not, what steps I should take to protect me and my baby. Update 1. I hope I'm doing this right. Thank you so much for all the advice and words of encouragement. Some of it was tough to read, but still deeply appreciated. Wanted to do an update because a lot of people were concerned for my safety. I took a commenter's advice and sent the pictures to a trusted friend. She pointed out that a passage I initially read as "every day I think about telling her" actually very clearly says killing her. I guess my brain couldn't comprehend that at first. I received a ton of helpful perspective and support, but that comment in particular might have saved my life. After I digested that, I called a crisis line and they were quite helpful in talking me through the shock. They also put me in touch with a center that's helping me get more affordable legal help. Bought some more time from my husband. Told him I'm enjoying getting out of town and I'd like to stay an extra night or 2. I have therapy tomorrow and an appointment with a social worker to make a safety plan. I feel like I have a good crew of family, friends, and professionals supporting me. Absolutely zero regrets now about reading his journal. My dad told me something was off, but I couldn't have imagined a worst-case scenario as bad as this. I'm so glad the inner alarm bells were louder than my conscience this time. Nothing about this marriage is worth risking my life to salvage. TLDR, I initially misread a part in the journal that says he thinks every day about killing me. Will be keeping myself out of the news and staying the hell away from him for good. Update 2. Just want to say a huge thank you to this community for helping me through a challenging time. Your comments and messages have been such a comfort, and I'm so touched by the kindness of internet strangers. At the suggestion of the social worker, I reported his journal to the local police, and that was, unsurprisingly, a 1/10 experience. The officer I spoke to chided me for reading his journal, spoke about his reasonable expectation of privacy, and basically threatened to tell my husband I had reported him. I had to firmly advocate for myself and stress that I was afraid for my life. It was an awful conversation, but now there is at least a record which includes photos of the journal. The family lawyer I spoke with advised me to file a protection order right away. The order would ban him from all contact with me and our child, bar him from our residence, my workplace, and any other places I request. He would then have to prove to a judge that he is a fit parent to be able to see his daughter again, and then we would go to mediation to try and agree on what visitation would look like. Another wrench in this situation is that we own a business together. I have an appointment with another lawyer this week to discuss what my options are there. The business was my idea. I'm confident I can run it without him, and I want to, but he's put a lot of time into it, and it's the main source of income for both of us right now. It's a good money maker, and I'm worried he'd fight me tooth and nail on this. We take turns going in, so I went as usual on Saturday, with a friend and a baseball bat. I continued my act of intending to reconcile, doing video calls with the baby, etc. While I was at our workplace, I found another journal. Page after page love letters to this other woman going back months. The progression from "I liked seeing you at the grocery store" to "I drove past your house today" was wild. He writes about how he's deeply in love with her, can't wait to marry her, etc. He wrote about every interaction he's ever had with her, and the poor woman seems completely innocent and oblivious. Even what he perceived as flirting seems like basic politeness. He mentions a few other times that he wants me to die. The most recent entry was from the day before. He writes to her that he thinks I might be breaking up with him, but that's fine because he never liked me that much anyway. If he's upset about anything, it's just about losing the house and how the breakup will be perceived by our friends and community. Curious if people think I should warn the other woman. It's my instinct not to, at least not before the ink dries on our impending paperwork. I was already concerned about how he might react to being served with the protection order, most worried that he might try to sabotage our business or trash the house. Given how preoccupied he seems to be with his public image, I made a plan to confront him about the journals and use the protection order as leverage. Here's how it went down. I left the journal and my baby with my friend and went to our house with 2 trusted male friends and the baseball bat. They waited on our porch. I told my husband that if they heard anything louder than a speaking voice, they would come in with the bat. I told him I had to tell him something he wouldn't like to hear, and he needed to know that I had already taken steps to protect myself. I told him I read the journals, specifically what he said about wanting me to die and thinking every day about killing me. I said I had taken photos, that they are backed up, and a trusted source also has copies. That I also have the original copy of the journal full of love letters. I wondered until this moment if he had intended for me to find them, but he was obviously blindsided. He tried to say it was just venting, but I told him I would not be taking any chances or entertaining anything he has to say about it. That after reading what I read, I will never trust him or feel safe around him ever again. I told him that no one that knows him knows about this yet. The men on the porch just know that I'm breaking up with him and need support. This was true, aside from the friend that I called to stay with and the other friend I sent the photos to, who lives on the other side of the country. I said I am willing to protect his reputation here if he cooperates with me. I told him that I don't even have to ruin his chances with the other woman, but I can. I said that he can either do what I need to feel safe, or I can have that safety court ordered. He asked what I wanted, and I said I wanted him to give up the business. We'll sort out the details after I speak to the other lawyer, but for now I want his keys and I'll be changing the passwords on everything. He didn't put up any kind of fight. He didn't want to hear anything about what it would look like to go through the courts. He didn't ask about our baby. He just calmly got up and got the keys and asked if I wanted anything else. I told him that any communication with me should be about separation logistics only, like arranging a time for me to collect the rest of my things. Since then he has been blowing up my phone, saying I know his heart, let's walk back from the edge, let's talk to a therapist, he's sorry his words hurt me, etc. Each time, I just tell him he's crossing my boundaries and he backs off. He apparently told his mom and sister everything and they're supporting him in getting help. He's been cooperative so far. He's interviewing for a new job, seeing a therapist and updating me on his movements, though I didn't ask for this. I've temporarily moved in with my parents. My commute to work is longer, but I have help with baby and home-cooked dinners. Starting to settle into new routines, doing so much therapy and yoga. I inherited a small cabin before my husband and I met. It is currently being renovated and the original plan was to move in there with my husband and baby when it's done. The cabin is actually in my mother's name because she's never trusted my husband, correct, and wanted me to shield it from him in case of a divorce. Thank you, MOM. So I will have a permanent home for me and baby very soon. The dust still needs to settle and it could get worse before it gets better, but I'm optimistic at this point. I'm confident I'm going to come out the other side of this as a badass single mom with an incredible child, a thriving business, and an adorable little home. Honestly, the thought of having all those things on my own without my husband is so freeing. I've got a great village supporting me. Thank you all so much for being part of it. TLDR, confronted my husband about the journal, with backup. He's going to step away from our shared business and stay out of my life. Have a protection order ready to go if he acts up. My dad stole my college scholarship money and threatened to kill himself because I was angry. I said go ahead. For context, I am currently a college freshman. I am on a full ride to my university. Every semester, I get a check sent to my house to pay off my housing costs, which is about $9,000. My unemployed father got evicted from my old address because he wasn't paying rent, so my family started living in a hotel. I was questioning how they were paying for the hotel, considering it was $150 a night. Turns out, my father used my college check to cash out and pay for the hotel for 2 months. I begged him to pay off my college housing costs for 2 months straight. He lied to me, telling me that it was attached to some funds, which were hard to get out. Very confusing, but keep in mind I have absolutely zero financial literacy and my father never went into depth. I brushed it off, hoping that everything would work for the best. My college housing gave my father a deadline to pay off housing costs, November 1st. I was stressed for 2 months, unable to eat well, sleep, socialize, etc. If my dad doesn't pay it off, I may or may not have to drop out. When the deadline hit, I called my dad and asked him why he hadn't paid off my housing costs. He finally revealed that he used the check on the hotel we were living in. I was furious and I started interrogating him like a prosecutor. He blamed the family for being responsible for using my college money, not himself, and also blamed me. He lent me allowance money for 2 months, telling me that it was from my relatives when it was actually from my $9,000 housing check. I asked him why he would do this and he said that he didn't want to stress me out. I cried telling him I worked way too hard in high school for me to drop out. I said that he owed me an apology 3 times over the phone, but he refused because he thought he had done nothing wrong since he was providing for the family. I asked him again and he said sorry in a mocking voice. I told him that he was full of shit and he started saying that he wants to put a gun to his head and kill himself and it will all be on me. This is not the first time he has done that. I told him to do it and I hung up. My mom called me and I informed her about the situation. She told me to apologize to my dad and I told her, as psychotic as I may sound, I have no remorse, especially after what he did. My mom threatened to disown me, but I somehow mended things with them for 3 weeks. It is currently Thanksgiving break and my father still didn't pay off my check and he said that he would get money Saturday to pay it off. My mom told me again to apologize to him after he paid my housing costs, and I said I would avoid conflict. But I think I'm way too stubborn to apologize, especially because I genuinely think I have nothing to be sorry for. My dad never fully apologized and made a joke out of me to the family. Update. First and foremost, immediately after this happened, I managed to get a separate debit card without my parents knowing. I don't have a job now, but I'm looking to get one later on in the semester. I didn't go to the financial aid center because my dad somehow managed to pay me back. I'm going under the assumption that it's through my grandmother's social security checks. Last December, after weeks of calling my father to make up for my scholarship money and pay me back, he finally sent me a check for $9,000. The check came in my dorm mail around midnight. I was asleep by then and my dad was spam calling my phone to tell me it was in the mail. I didn't call him back until 1 in the afternoon because I had an exam that day. He started cursing at me, telling me how he couldn't sleep all night because I didn't answer my phone. I talked back and said, The stress you put me through for 3 months by lying about my scholarship check is nothing compared to the stress you went through for a day." He started insulting me in every way possible, telling me that I was spoiled. I swore back saying, "Are you ****ing serious?" and he hung up. Moments later, my dad made my mom call me because he didn't want to argue with me. She screamed at me saying that I should always have respect for him as a father and that I should apologize for swearing. I said that yes, I did swear at him, but he did too, calling me bunch of slurs and whatnot. She also accused me of purposely ignoring them when I made it clear several times that I was asleep and I had an exam at 9 in the morning, hence not calling them at midnight. I told her that we shouldn't even have this talk because he was clearly in the wrong in this entire situation and every other kid would have gone to the financial aid center and my dad would have gotten in trouble. My mom misunderstood me for saying that I was going to report my dad. She had a mental breakdown and hung up. Moments later, my dad called and told me to go ahead and report him because I would be going to jail instead of him because he sent me some of the money from the check, which is bullshit. I called him out on his bullshit and he said that he was permanently severing ties so I could learn my lesson. He hung up. I didn't call them for a week until I realized that I didn't have a place to stay for winter break, my dorm closed. I swallowed my pride and called them back to apologize. They said they'll accept me back to the family. This honestly still keeps me up at night, but I literally didn't have a choice but to stay with them over break. Over break, they'd notice that I'm way more cold and distant towards them and they still wonder why. Luckily, I got the $9,000 check from my university to pay for this semester's housing fees. The best thing that came out of this is that I ended up reconnecting with my estranged sister, F25. Long story short, my father financially abused my sister for years, maxing out her credit cards and leaving her $20,000 in debt. They cut all ties a year ago after my sister started dating a guy they didn't approve of. When I was on good terms with them, they painted her as the bad guy, telling me that she betrayed them by choosing her boyfriend over the entire family. I also didn't know that my dad financially abused her. Turns out she was in the same situation I was in and ended up dropping out because my dad didn't let her take out a student loan. I talked to my sister and she said that she was honestly glad that she severed ties with them because she's finally financially independent, even if she's not financially stable. We're closer than ever and I probably consider her as a shoulder to lean on. Mentally, I'm really not doing well. I'm generally stoic, but this is taking a hard emotional toll on me because my family was my world. Before college, I always knew my father was insane, but my mother was my ride or die. I told her everything. I helped her through her marital problems. She told me everything, and the fact that she chose my abusive, unemployed father, the man that she always talked about wanting to divorce, over her daughter is heartbreaking. She still expects me to be her armchair therapist, and she told me she wants me to act like how I did before. I told her over break that no matter what she does, she will never mend back the trust one had for her then. And my father, despite his flaws, I never expected him to use my check. He put such a huge emphasis on education and told me he wanted me to have the life he never had. And knowing he would sacrifice my education just so he could live in a fancy $150 hotel is very disheartening. Recently, I've been very isolated. I still talk to a few people, my grades are falling, and I haven't been eating or sleeping well. Maybe this situation should be a wake-up call for me, but I've come to the point where I'm completely apathetic about everything. I refrain from drugs thankfully, but even so, I feel like my life is on autopilot.